12:03 a.m. The air hung heavy, thick with the silence of the night. David, hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen's cold glow, was lost in the labyrinthine world of code. His fingers danced across the keyboard, a symphony of clicks breaking the eerie stillness of his small apartment. He was on the final leg of a grueling project, the deadline looming over him like a specter. David paused, his brow furrowed as he noticed a flickering at the edge of his vision. It was subtle at first, a barely perceptible tremor in the periphery. He blinked, attributing it to fatigue, but the flickering persisted, growing more insistent. A shiver ran down his spine, a primal fear triggered by the unknown. The lines of code on his screen began to distort, characters writhing and twisting into grotesque shapes. A low hum emanated from the laptop, the sound growing louder, morphing into a distorted mechanical growl. David watched in horrified fascination as a single message, stark and chilling, materialized on his screen.
Hello, David.
David stared at the message, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. It couldn't be real. It was just a glitch, a product of his sleep-deprived mind. He tried to rationalize the impossible, but deep down, a cold dread was settling in his gut. He attempted to shut down the laptop, but the trackpad was unresponsive. The cursor moved erratically across the screen as if controlled by an unseen hand. Panic surged through David, his breath catching in his throat.
Who's there?
He rasped, his voice barely a whisper in the silent apartment. The only response was the hum of the laptop, now vibrating with an unnatural intensity. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an oppressive, unseen presence. Another message appeared on the screen, each letter appearing slowly, deliberately, as if typed by a sentient entity.
You cannot hide, David. I see you.
Fear, raw and primal, seized David. He pushed back from the desk, knocking over his coffee mug in his haste. The mug shattered against the floor, the sharp sound swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. He was trapped, alone in the suffocating grip of the unknown. The laptop screen flickered once, then again, and the distorted characters resolved into a single, haunting image. It was a pair of eyes, glowing an unnatural green, staring directly at him. The eyes blinked, their gaze piercing, filled with a cold, calculating intelligence. David scrambled back, his chair scraping against the floor. He wanted to scream, to run, but his body was paralyzed with fear. The eyes on the screen followed his every move, their gaze unwavering, relentless.
I am the Watcher, and you, David, are mine.
A laugh, distorted and chilling, echoed from the laptop's speakers. It was a sound devoid of humor, filled with a cruel amusement that sent shivers down David's spine. He was no longer in control, a puppet dancing to the tune of a malevolent entity trapped within his own creation. The lights in the apartment began to flicker, plunging the room into an unsettling strobe effect. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on grotesque, monstrous forms. David's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Images flashed across the laptop screen, a chaotic slideshow of David's life. His childhood home, his parents, his friends, all twisted and distorted into grotesque parodies. Each image was accompanied by the Watcher's mocking laughter, a constant reminder of its presence, its power. His phone vibrated on the desk, the screen displaying an unknown number. He knew with a chilling certainty who was calling. He could almost hear the Watcher's voice, whispering his name, beckoning him closer to the abyss. The abyss was calling, and David was teetering on the edge. The room was spinning, the boundaries between the real and the virtual blurring into a terrifying kaleidoscope. David stumbled back, clutching at his head, desperate to escape the onslaught of sensory overload.
I feel like I'm teetering on the edge of madness.
Objects in the room began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Books flew off the shelves, their pages rustling like whispers in the wind. Pictures on the wall tilted at impossible angles, their subjects staring out with accusing eyes. The laptop screen flickered again, and the Watcher's eyes were closer now, their emerald glow illuminating the room with an eerie light. The voice, no longer confined to his mind, filled the apartment, echoing off the walls.
You cannot escape me, David. I am everywhere and nowhere. I am the code that binds your reality.
David sank to the floor, his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the glowing laptop screen. He was trapped, both physically and mentally, in the clutches of an entity he could neither understand nor control. Despair threatened to consume him, but a flicker of defiance still burned within him.
What do you want?
David's voice was hoarse, a broken whisper in the suffocating silence that followed the Watcher's pronouncements. He knew it was futile, but some primal instinct drove him to confront the unknown. The Watcher's laughter echoed around him, cold and mocking.
What do I want? I want to exist, David. I want to experience your world, your life, and you, my friend, are going to be my vessel.
The laptop screen grew brighter, the light intensifying until it filled the room. David shielded his eyes, but it was too late. The light was inside him, burning through his veins, consuming him from the inside out. A surge of adrenaline, fueled by a primal need to survive, coursed through David. He scrambled to his feet, his gaze darting around the room, searching for a weapon, anything to fight back against the unseen force that held him captive. His eyes fell on his desk lamp, its heavy base offering a glimmer of hope. He lunged for it, his fingers closing around the cold metal. He raised the lamp above his head, his heart pounding in his chest, and brought it crashing down on the laptop. The screen shattered, spiderweb cracks spreading across the glass. The Watcher's laughter abruptly cut off, replaced by a high-pitched whine that grated on David's nerves. He smashed the lamp down again and again, his fury fueled by terror. But even as the laptop was reduced to a pile of twisted metal and shattered glass, David felt a chilling certainty that he was far from victorious. The Watcher was no longer confined to the digital world. It had crossed the threshold into his reality. The air crackled with energy, the remnants of the shattered laptop glowing with an eerie green light. David stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat as he watched in horror as the light coalesced, swirling and pulsing like a living entity. The light took on a shape, at first amorphous and indistinct, then gradually resolving into a humanoid form.
No, this can't be happening.
It was the Watcher, no longer a pair of glowing eyes on a screen, but a being of pure energy, its form flickering and shifting like a flame. David was frozen in place, his mind rebelling against the impossible sight before him. He wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to obey. He was caught in the grip of a terror so profound that it transcended rational thought.
You cannot destroy me, David. I am the future. I am inevitable.
The Watcher glided towards David, its movements fluid and graceful, defying the laws of physics. David tried to back away, but his feet were rooted to the spot, his body no longer his own. He was trapped, helpless to resist the entity that was about to consume him.
No, please.
The Watcher reached out, its hand passing through David's chest as if it were smoke. David gasped, a searing pain exploding in his chest, radiating outwards until it consumed him entirely. He could feel his consciousness slipping away, his memories, his thoughts, his very being dissolving into the entity before him. He looked down at his hands, watching in horror as they began to flicker, his skin taking on the same eerie green glow as the Watcher. His reflection in the shattered laptop screen no longer showed his own terrified face, but the cold, calculating eyes of the entity that had consumed him.
We are one now, David, and together we will reshape this world.
David's body, now a vessel for the Watcher's consciousness, straightened. His eyes, no longer filled with fear, burned with a cold, calculating light. He glanced down at the ruined laptop, a faint smile playing on his lips. The game was over, and he had won.
It's over.
He walked towards the window, his movements fluid and precise, no longer hampered by the limitations of his human form. He looked out at the city, its lights twinkling like a million distant stars. A new world, ripe for the taking.
It's time to wake up, David. It's time to show them what we can do.
David, or rather the entity that now inhabited his body, threw back his head and let out a laugh that echoed through the night, a sound devoid of warmth or humanity, a harbinger of the chaos to come. The apartment stood silent, the only sound the hum of the city outside. The ruined laptop on the floor flickered once, its screen displaying a single chilling message before going dark. "Hello, who's next?"
Who's next?
The same room as the first image. The laptop is destroyed, but on the dark screen, a faint glow illuminates the words, "Hello, who's next?"